You're listening to a main feed episode. Go to patreon.com/Celtic Ligers where €5 a month gets you weekly full-length episodes, stray bonus content and access to the back catalogue. Also helps cover hosting and gives us money for sweeties. Thank you. Celtic Ligers.
Recorded 11th June 2025.
I have two things I want to get out of the way first.
Okay. Welcome to Celtic Ligers. I'm Gary.
Welcome. First of all, I'm running a reading group with some other people.
That's James. Yeah.
That's me. It's called, if it starts mid-June. Well, now it's mid-June, I suppose. It starts soon. For more information, go to Saints and Scholars Club on Instagram.
Okay.
There are three reading groups. They sort of run simultaneously every 2 weeks. So one's on militarism and neutrality, one's on care of the community, and another one is on the environment and capitalism.
Do you need to be in Dublin to go to these?
You do.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not doing a hybrid event. I think they're...
No. Yeah, I think you're right.
But some of the others might. I'm not sure. And then there's a film club as well.
Okay.
So if you're interested in meeting up with people to talk about the issues, I'll meet every 2 weeks, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So if you want more information, go to that. But it should be good. The second thing is Celtic Ligers is splitting up. I'm forming my own podcast now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be releasing a 40,000 word document.
Yeah. There's
detailing all my issues. But I just want to say, first of all, that I love Gareth. I think he's great. I'm going to be working with him from now on.
Yeah.
But I just think he's counter-revolutionary.
I also think he's fucking, annoying, whingy, and I think he's been working against the interest of the working class, which I'm now going to define as, somebody who, from like the Victorian era, who works on a steamboat or something.
Yeah, I'm really in the interest of like chimney sweeps and the guy who shoots a horse in the head before it goes into gloom.
The little boys who are fluffers in Victorian parlours.
Yeah. So the good news is we have a new, smaller left-wing party now in Ireland.
I had seen, so there was because it was like a thing on Twitter. The first I saw of it was there's an account I follow called is Sammy McCaster, I think it is, and he was giving out about, or they, I don't know what they are. They were giving out about Laszlo, the guy who led the Trinity protests, demonstrations, and apparently Laszlo, can't remember his last name, had written this big fuck off long thing for the Red Network, just giving out about the left in Ireland essentially. And I tried to read a bit of it, got bored, stopped reading it. Then the next day they were like, the Red Network is splitting off from PBP, and I was like, I wasn't really aware that you were in PBP, but whatever. I'll read that article as well. Yeah. Another big fucking massive thing. And I read all of that. It didn't really make any sense to me. I mean, it was weird to be like, I'm going to write a big, long, impenetrable block of text and then accuse PBP of being kind of incomprehensible to the genuine working class, Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to also be like split off from the party and try to be like, look, this is healthy, this is good, we're going to keep people on their toes. Also, fuck those guys. Just being so aggressive towards them. Just like...
it really descended into like, fuck those
guys. And then I was like, okay, what does that mean for Madeleine Johansson? Because we actually read out on last week's podcast something from Red Network, which she had written about the questions that you should ask your worker friends who might be racist. the anti-migrant stuff, how to combat the far right. And then she came out and said, no, I'm going to be moving to this amazing new thing, the Red Network. And then I was like, okay, well, now I got to see this a bit differently now. And I go on to their stuff, and then you kind of like, where they've got those images of like, what do the kids call it? Potato quality? So what are the horrible pixelated images of like really reputable looking blogs, and then writing big long screeds that somehow kind of go, giving out about things that like, to me, it really just read as like completely interpersonal stuff, which was then confirmed by any of their responses to anybody who criticized the direction they were taking. Okay. And I should
like, it starts off. Yeah. I'm just gonna.
Can I just say about the criticism that people had? People would always start their criticism with, "Yeah, I know that PvP are a little shit, but from what I've read of your thing, I don't understand like what differences you're trying to point to between what you're setting up and what you're leaving."
Yeah.
So that's yeah. So go on anyway. Sorry.
Well, like, it starts off. I feel like at the start they are talking a lot about having more, like, maintaining unity with people before profit. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the first couple of paragraphs. Like, we'll be working with many of the same activists and campaigns and movements. The difference is the political lines of demarcation will be clearer.
So far, so
and then
good.
And then they talk about how PvP said that they would enter government with Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
If certain red lines are met. So like that's another point of conflict. And then they talk about how maybe they say PvP aren't clear enough about their revolutionary politics.
Yeah.
Like, how clear should you be with the working class that you're essentially trying to dismantle?
Yeah.
The parliamentary system and all the rest of it. And they think they should be clear. But then by the end of it, it's like, and PvP, it's full of middle class people who think whoever's the most revolutionary is the person who shouts out, "You're a Nazi the loudest." Or
Jesus.
Like, it really is just like, feels very like the manifesto is responded to certain people within the party.
Well, there was
certain conversations.
There was like gripped adjacent people, right wingers who were like, "See, even the left can't stand all this people calling each other Nazis," and not to be like, "Oh, look what it's doing now, that it's giving the right ammunition," although it is giving the right ammunition, but whatever, it's not like they needed a reason. But I'm willing to like hear you out, and then I'm like reading down through this, and I'm just kind of like, because like one of the things they were talking about was like, it's unclear to me whether they said that PvP wanted to go into coalition with Sinn Féin, but also were not going to, that they actually were not going to go in. Because like the Irish Independent reported it, not that they're the best faith arbiters, but anyway, they said that people before profit wanted to go into coalition with Sinn Féin, which is why Red Network wanted to leave people before profit, because they didn't want to go into coalition with Sinn Féin. But actually what they're saying is that people before profit said that they're want to go in, but don't really want to go in, whereas Red Network want to go in, but on a case-by-case basis, they'll vote down any legislation which doesn't work for them, for Sinn Féin, okay? And then people are like, isn't that what PvP are proposing? And then they were like, it's kind of, I guess the pushback would be like, yeah, but they don't mean it. It's like, it reminded me of when Gary Gannon was given out to Paul Murphy at an event that we attended that the Ditch organised, and he was like, I'd have serious reservations about kind of letting, or whether people before profit will be kind of accepted into our coalition government. And I was like, you don't have a coalition government. What are you talking about? Imagine like,
I know.
It's not even an option. So what are you even talking about?
It's just so far in the future.
Yeah.
If it happens at all, why are any of these people in party politics?
Yeah, yeah,
Just being independent. Like what?
yeah,
Like I'd hate to be in a political party, but I wouldn't.
yeah,
I wouldn't join one.
yeah.
You know?
We used to be in one.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. As in, if I was running, obviously.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I don't think political parties are particularly good for democracy. You know?
Yeah,
But like if you join them, you know what they're about, and you know that. It's just depressing to me that, like, you know, when Fine Gael are on the table, you'd think you'd be able to get along well with the guy who's, like, just a slightly different type of Trotskyist, you know? Like, you'd think you'd patch it up.
yeah. Well, this is a thing as well. So within the thing, they started referring to PBP as, like, student politics sort of stuff. Which I was like, why are you doing that? I hate when people... Like, and then the other thing was that... they might be correct about this, which is that PBP have emphasized courting white-collar, like, middle-class votes, okay? But, like, that's a strategy that you're kind of like... You know, there's this theory that obviously if we harness the working class, then we can get all of these votes that get us into power, and then, you know, it's about taking on the far right and trying to win back those people who've been kind of disillusioned. And you're like, well, that's fine as an argument, okay? But like, they can also go back and say, well, you know, you can also say that this is a strategy of we're going to go after the middle class because they seem to decide elections, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to activate people who don't vote, or are we going to take on the people who do vote and try to convince them? And do we soften our image for them? And how much do we soften it? And this, that, and the other. And you're like, those are like, I think that both of those are like reasonable strategies, you know? But their response is to be like, oh, you're traitors, do you know?
Yeah.
You betrayed these people, and you're kind of like, why do you think that that's a useful place to start building a left coalition? Do you know, like, why do you think now, like, that's to come from that position of being so aggressive towards these people that you're leaving, do you know? Like, I don't know. Because the other thing that happened then was, there was a guy, Dean Buckley, let me get up the thing, because it was my favorite part. I don't know whether, I took a screenshot of it because I'm sure they would have deleted it. But, because people are like, I have my problems with people before profit, but like, I'm like, but why are you doing it this way? Like, nobody really objects to them leaving. They just want some sort of coherency about why you're leaving.
Yeah,
you know?
But the other thing as well, like, people put before profit as a small party, but it also is, there is diversity within it, you know? And like, yeah, you have people who court middle class votes in middle class areas. And then you have people who court working class votes in working class areas. Mm-hmm. It just, I'd be interested in seeing what would prevent the Red Network people from acting within people before profit.
Maybe we'll find out in the coming while, because like, there seems to be examples of where they wanted to say something but were prevented in doing so by the party structure because it was seen as too aggressive, which I could well believe given the pivot that PBP have made. I wouldn't say it's an aggressive pivot, but they have done a kind of milder version of the Sinn Féin thing of like sanding off the edges to try and be more approachable to like Labour voters or something like that, or the Soc Dem voters. But it doesn't, like, I don't really see that as, I feel it as differing strategies, and some part of me feels maybe you do need to sugar the pill a little bit, you know?
But that's also like the nature of a political party. Like that's part of the issue with them, is that like you had that in every party that's ever existed. You get it in the Greens. Like, there is a whip.
Yeah.
You know? So like, if you leave one and you set up another, you're going to run into the same problem down the road.
I know.
Where someone wants to say something and then the group agrees, actually, no, we shouldn't say that because it doesn't align with some other thing, you know? So then You know, like, it just seems insane to me
Yeah.
that your response to party politics is to set up another party, except this one only has one councillor.
Yeah. I think the reason as well that I wanted to bring up the Sammy McCaster and then Laszlo having a little beef with each other is because that's where that stuff is. Just a stupid little party squabble. I mean, neither of them are in PBP, but ultimately what I mean is that like this sort of like dumb left-wing interfighting, seeing it break from Twitter and now be in the Irish Independent. And, people, like, it's not like they're going to talk about it for long, but it's like, is this the best way to launch your new political project? Is to look like a bunch, like the people who are referring to it as, oh, these student politicians of politics over here. And then I'm going to go on Twitter and I'm going to be getting in the replies to people, giving out to them, and also write a 40,000 word screed, that is just like, how is that? How is that good? Like, why are you're saying, oh, you're bad at politics. Here's how I would do politics. Big, long fucking essay on a blog with all these images that have like 3 pixels. And then anybody who criticizes my approach, I'm just going to say that, fuck you. We don't want you in our party. We want the working class, This is the reply. Dean Buckley said, I find it incredibly ironic that you deride people before profit for downplaying their socialism, yet neither this nor your political program mentions Marx or the fact you have to be a Marxist to join. And then Red Media responded, not taking criticisms from a Catholic socialist, to be honest. And then people underneath were like, I mean, didn't you say that you wanted to court the working class? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of like working class people would be Catholic,
I know. Like, I was reading something by John, that guy John Molyneux. He's like a British Marxist. And like, he made the point that PBP aren't, like, and he wasn't criticizing them. He was just saying they're not fully socialist party or a fully Marxist-Leninist party, because you don't have to be one to join.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, who vote for, I know a lot of them would have Trotskyists or whatever in their bio, but it's not front and center.
Yeah.
The front and center bit of PVP is people for profit.
Yeah.
Which means different things to different people. So he was saying, like, PVP are sort of like a pre-revolutionary party. If you want to think of it that way. So like, you would expect that if Red Network were to break, they'd be like, well, we're the Marxist-Leninists.
Yeah.
You have to be one to join. This is our whole deal.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like in their initial branding or their initial push, they really haven't distinguished themselves ideologically from people for profit. I think this is a real, like I say, if you look at the Irish political spectrum, like, you've Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and you have Soc Dems and Labour. You've Sinn Féin before that. Like, it's just like PVP are so far to the left.
Yeah.
That if you're like, oh, the problem with them is they're courting the middle class. It's like, they just are. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
It just seems like you're way too in the weeds. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that there's a... I don't want to call it a snobbery, but there's this idea of, like... It's the same spice bag thing. He's going to keep getting a mention until I forget this article. But that idea of like, oh, you're waving your pink flag and you're alienating the working class without, your tricolour there, without your tricolor waving in the wind, okay? Like, they look at these, college-educated toffs as far as they're concerned and be like, kind of are like, fuck you. You're not the working class and you alienate the working class,
Yeah.
So I'll agree that a lot of those people do make up people for profit. The ones that I have met, the ones that do, like, But then the big spiel that they put out there is imperceptible. It's like it's the exact same. You get one point I'm trying to make, whereas like it seems to be a completely aesthetic thing that they're responding to, which is like, no, we need like working class people going into these areas and, you know, creating the revolution. Whereas, I think both are valid, is what I'm saying.
If they could point to one red line or something, you know, if they could be like, we can't work within PvP because its structure inherently blocks us from working.
Yeah.
You know, I get it then, but it just feels a bit like start your own club.
Yeah, well,
you know?
they've said that, but then they haven't really pointed to anything, you know?
Yeah. And within PvP, I've said it before, there's the two wings. There's like the anime wing and the normal person wing, you know? And I like them both well enough, but they're both there.
Yeah.
Like even in the elected politicians, like there's I put Paul Murphy in the anime wing. I like him, but he's anime adjacent. Like, you know? I don't think this is going to be successful.
I would be very surprised. I feel like you need to have more stuff. You need to have a... Can I be real? I mean, maybe this is me sounding like a dickhead, but have like a logo and then have like 6 bullet points and be like, this is what we're doing, go. And then no shade cast at your former comrades.
Yeah.
And then just like, what is this? Having a fucking book and then saying fuck you on the way out the door. Like, maybe just wait until you're not angry to do this, because you clearly are angry, do you know? Like, here's another exchange I want to point to. Owen Daly responded to them. Why are you using student as a synonym for frivolous or decadent? And what's your theoretical distinction here between working class and middle class, where both are selling their labor for wages? White collar workers are workers, but there is a middle class Marxist traditionally called petty bourgeois. From HR managers to lawyers, coffee shop managers, small businesses, drug dealers, etc. They'd all be the middle class. There aren't just workers and capitalists. Owen responds, that's not what petty bourgeois means though. Ironically, it sounds like you have embraced an identitarian understanding of working and middle class. Red Media respond, class is defined by 1. Relationship to means of production. 2. Relationship to surplus extraction. 3. Relationship to other classes. Owen says, I think you're confusing the term petty bourgeois with professional managerial class. I happen to agree the PMC has a distinct political function, but white collar or middle class are not the same as PMC. Okay? So like, you know, even that discussion is already, the launch of a new political brand is getting things into the fucking weeds, all right? But to my ear, you can disagree, listeners, Owen seems to have a better understanding of this political terminology than they do, okay? They're just going like, the coffee shop manager needs to, you know, you know what I mean? As in like, he's saying, no, there's a professional managerial class who kind of control our lives. And then there's the kind of middle class who are people who want to also engage in left-wing politics, you know, who are not the bosses, essentially. So you're saying, oh no, we fuck court in the middle class. And I was like, the idea is, no, it's essential that we also court the middle class. Otherwise we don't have a constituency, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. No, a guy like Madeline Johansson.
Yeah.
I think we both like her. She's good.
Yeah.
She's their only elected representative now, as far as I understand now. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I also wanted to use this in reference to, did you listen to that podcast in the end? The one with Mickey Moran?
I nearly did.
Okay. That's fine. Because I've kind of honestly forgotten a lot of what he said, but it was interesting because, so there's the podcast is, let me pull it up for listeners if they want to listen to it. I'd highly recommend it, even though there's 1 or 2 things that kind of drove me mad. It's for a New Republic podcast, and the name of it is Immigration Consultation and the Left-Wing Response, a conversation with an East Wall community activist who Mickey Moran, sits down with Joe Mooney, an anti-racist community activist based in East Wall. So it was interesting to hear it from kind of the trenches, do you know? But there was a little bit of the spice bag in it, because he was, there were several things that he said which were sort of an uncomfortable thing to hear, but maybe worth hearing, do you know, which were, that there are all. He was basically like, the whole conversation really needs to be heard because he provides context for all of these things that he's saying, and it doesn't just come off as ill-considered racist nonsense, okay? But he's basically bringing up the genuine concerns that people might have and how we could potentially address them, okay?
Right.
And he was skeptical of the approach of younger activists who call everything dog whistling and racism, do you know? And he was saying that there's an older man who was, like, he said in East Wall, the National Party were going around, and before the original protest that kind of kicked everything off, and they were trying to get a foothold in the area, but were like run out of town because they were kind of openly racist, okay? Whereas when there was like the center that was going to, the thing that was going to be turned into an iPass center, he was like, when developers come into the area, they consult with groups like us. We don't have a veto, but we would be able to tell them, like, if you're going to set up here in this way and do these things, then it's going to be an issue, okay? If you're going to set up in this place, it's not going to be habitable, and we need to know who's coming into the area so we can account for school places, etc., and things like this, okay? So he says the cloak and dagger approach that they have been taking, the government, where you ship these people in the middle of the night, you don't tell anybody what's going on, you know? When people say, like, we have a right to know who's coming into our area, they sound like they might not be racist or wrong in the way, you know? So he was trying to basically just like saying, what outcome do you want and how do we work towards that? And it requires some uncomfortable questions because people aren't going to be quite as like progressive as you are, you know? But they understand these things. Like, it's like one of the things was he was saying, when the families come in, people understand that. When men come in, they have a harder time. But he was like, if they hear their stories, then they have an easier time. He's like, one of the guys who came in was from Afghanistan who had his leg broken by the Taliban, you know? He was like, anybody who hears that is going to be like, I understand why he left that situation, you know? He's talking about like an old man. Yeah. He's talking about an old man as well who's like, all of these guys who are going to stay there and they've got no jobs and nowhere to go, they're going to be congregating and looking in my window, you know? And he's like, well, you could say that he's right or wrong for that. But like, these are areas who have seen antisocial behavior. And so that's what they believe like causes this antisocial behavior is a bunch of men who have nothing to do. Okay. What was the other thing that he said? Oh yeah. He said that one of the things that the community was saying is the community organizers were led to believe that there were going to be Ukrainians in there. Okay. So they were reassuring the people saying that there was going to be Ukrainians in there. And then it turns out a bunch of people, from sub-Saharan Africa are being brought in. Okay. Now, says you, who fucking cares? But in this instance, he was pointing out, like, now it looks like we're lying and we're misleading people and they feel like they can't trust us and we can't give them the information that they need. And he pointed to another example of in Meath where they were texting their representative who was sending them a message saying, oh, Roderick O'Gorman has assured me that they're not putting people into that property while people were being put into the property. Do you know? Yeah. So he's just talking about the dysfunction that creates and the difficulties and barriers. And it was problematic to hear that stuff about like the person's race mattering, but unfortunately it kind of does. And it's like, how do you combat that? Do you know? And how do you reach? And then the other thing that he brought up was, here are the two things that kind of bothered me and why I was like, oh, we should talk about this on the show. Okay. One was, he brought up that in East Wall they decided not to do a counter demonstration to the racist demonstration because they were like, we're going to create this racist. We're going to create this thing almost where we're labeling it anti-racist and racist, okay? And maybe people are being racist, but they don't want to be called racist. And so you start creating this friction, which makes it harder for people to come over to your point of view, you know?
Yeah.
And battle against that. He was like, it's more effective to kind of not provide the opposition, but then go to people individually who you know and talk to them and convince them round and talk them round, you know? Which is like, you know, sounds slow and ineffective, but it's the work that works, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and so he then started giving out about the people who put up the protest on Sandwich Street, which then I started to rankle with a bit. He was like, oh, they were told by people in that area that this is what would happen. But the thing is, what I remember from the Sandwich Street thing is that the fascists showed up, and I do mean fascists, okay? I don't mean concerned citizens. And they were attacking people who were in this tent city, okay?
Yeah.
Which prompted a reaction of these people to show up, okay? And this guy was going on, and then they went there, and if the guards hadn't been there, then they'd been fucking torn apart, which is just crazy, you know? And I was kind of saying, we also know about that as the guards ferried on the protesters so those guys could come back later on and set those tents on fire, which they did, okay? And then, you know, what he seems to be suggesting is if it weren't for that demonstration, then those fires wouldn't have happened, which I just don't believe, you know?
Yeah, I don't either.
And an important detail about that as well is the reason that there was nobody in those tents when they were set on fire is because the demonstrators who were there moved them over to Connolly House on the Quays.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm just talking about this thing where it's like, I wanted to take it in tandem with a little comment that I read about what's going on in LA at the moment, you know, where people are giving out about the optics of it, okay?
Yeah.
And the pragmatism.
Optics are bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Optics are what people who don't turn up talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or like, so this guy, Joe, is talking about tactics, okay? Which is obviously different to optics. But I just wanted to read this out in relation, you know, to the what's happening in LA and also the response to the far right. Somebody said, this is a problem that stems from treating the anti-ICE actions as a kind of protest, therefore as some sort of appeal to either public opinion or the state, rather than community self-defense and resistance, which is about trying to deliver consequences against the state directly. Now, I guess state, far right, whatever, replace them there. But ultimately, like, yeah, like, it's like, it's just what you were saying. Oh, this protest doesn't look good. And it was like, well, it's not meant to look good to you. It's like, I saw somebody getting attacked and I didn't like that. So I'm standing in between the people attacking them. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Like, okay, this guy's... I'm trying to think of... It sounds really... I wish I did listen to it. But now, presumably this guy knows his community.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So when he's talking about tactics within the community, you have to defer to him.
Yeah.
Like, even with that march,
Yeah.
where they do the counter demonstration, like, maybe that was the right call. Like, but and I think it'd be... Did he ever know about, like, what his ultimate goal was?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I kind of...
Yeah, like, was it just keeping the peace?
No. He's like, you know, how do we kind of convert people to the cause and bring them over? And he did outline what he believed. Like, he was very articulate and knowledgeable about this stuff. It wasn't a case of, like, you know, oh, I don't know, just like you're saying, being some sort of, you know, arbiter, you know, just or whatever. Yeah, keep the peace.
Yeah, peacekeeper. So, like, anything he talks about in East Wall, I think you have to go along with it. Like, maybe he realizes that, you know, in an ideal world, the race of whoever's living in this centre wouldn't matter. But, the fact of the matter is it does. So
Yeah.
it has to be managed. Like, there have to be ways of navigating now. He doesn't
Yeah.
sound like the sort of guy who's like, oh no, we only want white immigrants.
Yeah.
But I think he understands that there's a level of like education needed in his community. Sounds like he's doing that.
I think he is, but there was a funny one as well, like, to briefly go back to inter-left squabbling, but he started getting mad at kind of like the kind of woke people, for want of a better word. And one of the things that he said was like, he was on some call and there was like a younger activist there who was like, we need to intervene with these racists. We can't let them like march on these, let them go unopposed. Okay. And then he was like, well, in East Wall, we handled it differently. And she was like, yeah, how'd that work out for you?
Yeah.
And he was just bringing it up like, what a thing to say. He's getting annoyed. But I was like, it was so familiar in that instance of just like, you could just imagine that Zoom call, couldn't you? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Like, a lot of it is probably down to just like the cultural differences between working class and middle class people.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Like, in a lot of working class areas, there is a more tight knit community. So, like, say if you're talking about Bruderstown, and I was like, oh, we're not going to do a demonstration. I'm just going to be chatting to people,
Yeah.
I'd be waiting a while before I met anybody. Like, there's not a lot of community chat going on.
Yeah.
So, like, it just wouldn't be realistic. Or, like, if you're talking about an anti-demonstration happening and doing a counter-demonstration in town, there's no community there.
Yeah.
So, like, it has to organise differently.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in East Wall and you know your neighbours,
Yeah.
you can manage it differently. And, like, you have to defer to the local knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, if you trust them, you trust them. But the criticising of other people, it just sounds... Like, I know we obviously criticise people, but it's fun, but it's not the most useful thing.
No. I mean, but that's not... Like, this podcast isn't praxis. It isn't organising. It isn't anything.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, this podcast is meant to be... Everything feels like shit right now. And I just want somebody...
Yeah.
I don't want to... You tune in to RTE or any of these things, and then they just don't acknowledge how awful everything is. It's nice to listen to people, I think, because this is what I think, to be like, yeah, this is shit, and this is my like lived experience of living through this shitty time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing is that the second point, and the one that I want to bring up, is that he was talking about the tactics as well, and he started giving out. He got very mad about the idiotic, stupid thing of having a counter demonstration to the fascist march down O'Connell Street by waving Palestinian flags. And so he started giving out about that, and he was like, "You shouldn't be doing that. It alienates like these people. You should be waving the tricolour. You should be waving these symbols that are hard won by Republican movements, okay?
Well, then turn up and wait.
You fucking do it." And like, and I kind of also wanted to link that into me. Into me. Can we talk about me for a minute? No, I went to like there was a racist demonstration that was happening in Cork, so we went to the counter demonstration. Fucking tricklers galore. I couldn't tell who the fuck was who. Like, I anytime I hear it, like Ronan said on the last podcast, or when we talked about the march, that he was there in the counter demonstration and saw plenty of tricolours. So whenever I see people saying like, what a stupid thing to do to wave the Palestinian flag, it's like, you should only be waving the tricolour. It's like, just shut your fucking mouth, okay? Also, what it is it's Republicans who are fucking sore. Do you know what I mean? Like they imbue that flag with a lot of meaning, and they hate that these other guys are flying it. And now they're giving out to people who are waving Palestinian flags, going, no, you should be waving the thing that I fought and was, very much involved in.
Yeah, I have such a hard time with this because it seems like everyone agrees with that point of view.
That there should be tricolours being waved everywhere.
Yeah, like everyone I talk to.
Yeah, no, like it's been a popular. I don't, so I'm not gonna, like.
I know. To me, it's just as straightforward as like, if you identify with the tricolour,
Yeah.
bring it and fly it.
Yeah.
And if you don't.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what a flag is for. Like in the Rising, the ones about the stupid question. This is such a stupid.
Okay.
If they have a tricolour in the Rising,
I'm pretty sure they did. I can look it up.
do they not have the green one with the gold right?
It was not until the Easter Rising of 1916 when it was raised above Dublin's General Post Office by Garroge O'Sullivan. That's according to Wikipedia.
Right. My point, anyway, is that they didn't have it because it was like you gotta have this to win over people.
Yeah.
They had it because it represented their values.
Yeah.
You know, like this was a symbol of an ideological struggle.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it shows
So
a very low opinion of people as well, to be
but like,
honest.
but similarly, like if you go to a protest, you bring the flag that you identify with.
Yeah.
You know, so if there's like a racist demonstration and there's a counter demonstration, and the racist demonstration all have tricolours, and
Yeah.
the counter demonstration of a mix,
Yeah.
I think that
Yes.
just shows the situation of the flag. I
I
don't
know.
think you could probably like launch this campaign to do a rebranding of the flag.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so maybe that'd be good. I just don't think it's up there.
No,
with bigger issues.
I also, yeah, obviously you do you. Bring the flag, okay? But also, like, I guess point your animus towards somebody who's deserving of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the idea of going like, fuck you for not waving the tricolour. I was like, I'm in an anti-racist demonstration. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I took time out of my day and was like, do you know what it's doing to those racists who are walking down the street, or the people who aren't necessarily racist or don't think that they're racist but actually are, but being swept along in the flow? And it's like, can I do me? You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, like, is this not, we're repeating ourselves now, but it's like, is this not the same triangulating that like all of these other parties that fucking red media or red network are accusing people of doing? Oh, you shouldn't be trying to figure out how to pitch yourself to the working class. You should just present your values and try to convince them. It's like, well, that's what I'm fucking doing, do you know?
Yeah. Like the tricolour has been putting out a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, sure, it was there at the Rising, but like, the state that became of it did a lot of bad things to its own citizens.
Yeah.
And like, the Republican struggle, it was very broad, and like the last iteration of it wasn't like a socialist struggle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the provisionals weren't socialist.
Mm.
And like half of the Rising wasn't so, like a lot of them, most of them were, but like to me it's a very complicated symbol, and you can
Yeah.
say, oh, it should be good if the left could have it.
Yeah.
Great, like it would be good. I'll give you that. I'm just not.
Well, while we're at it, wouldn't it be great if everybody just embraced socialism? Wouldn't that be something?
I just don't understand the other guy who is scared off by the Palestinian flag.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I
I don't really think that they, and also like, if they are, like, I honestly think that Palestine is a morality test, you know? And it's like, no, fuck Palestine, it's not here. No, fuck you. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's a case study. Like, if they're, you know, this is every government in the world that is allowing that to happen to Palestine. Can you live with that? Is that on your can that stay on your conscience? Do you not give a shit? You know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like
Okay.
whatever. Like if you don't care about Palestine, then fuck you. Like I don't really. whatever. I know I sound bad because I'm not like, but then again, I'm not a fucking organizer. I'm just saying my opinion, you know?
Yeah. Like, I definitely don't think you should be like anyone who flies a Irish flag is racist. I don't think, or I don't think you should ever think it's a bad thing to fly.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone does.
No. I think that would be stupid.
Yeah.
So, like, I have to tell you about my experience, right? So I was walking to the protest, all right? And,
In Cork.
What?
In Cork.
In Cork, yeah.
Yeah.
And big, massive, long demonstration of pro-Palestine supporters leading all the way up to the library from, you know, wherever. Very heartwarming. Guy walks past me, Israeli flag wrapped around his neck. First time I've ever seen one in the wild, honest to God.
Yeah.
And I did not know how I was going to react. And I had a very visceral reaction. I found myself going, prick, like as he walked past, which is very unlike me. Like, I got really like aggro. I was like, I can't fucking believe it. And I was so sickened. And then I got outside the library. There was a big group of people, and they have the speakers, and they're playing fucking music, which I detest, but I know is necessary. You know, where they're up there
What
going,
are they playing?
Solidarity
I hope
forever.
they're playing The Nation Once Again.
Do you know what they played? Like, some Spanish musician played something and singing in Spanish. Maybe it was Portuguese. I don't know. I didn't have a good ear for it when it was being sung. Sorry. I lost my train of thought. Then the American guy, Gary, famous American in Cork, wears a little Trotsky hat. He goes up there and makes some speech or something. And then he's like saying, oh, we're going to do solidarity forever. And I met a friend of the pod who did not want to be identified for work reasons.
Yeah.
And I was kind of going like, do you remember the same thing that happened when we were listening to Richard Boyd Barrett screaming at the podium during that Marxism festival? The same thing was happening listening to Solidarity Forever. I was like, I need to move away from these speakers. I can't handle it. And I desperately want to see the racist demonstration. So I walked around to the barrier, and then I would see some tricolours, and I'd be like, fuck that guy. And then I'd see he was wearing a keffiyeh, and he was on the other side of the barrier, the same one as me. I was like, oh, I guess he's all right. You know? And then I'd look over the barrier, and like, there wasn't nobody there, but there was significantly less that were on the other side, which was good. Okay.
Yeah. The bad.
Like, on the bad side, there was about, I'd say on the good side, there was a few thousand people, whereas on the bad side, there was maybe 1,000. Okay. And they were like fucking crazy on this other side of it. Like, really, they were waving flags, the likes of which I've never seen, which are like, one of them was like this, like, imagine a big pie that had all these segments, and the segments were so small of each individual flag, I couldn't recognize where any of them were from.
The flags they do be coming up with are insane.
Yeah.
You know? Like, on the left, there's like the Palestinian flag.
Star and Plows.
Beloved Plough and Stars.
The Plough and Stars, sorry.
The green one sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas on the bad side, it'll be like Union Jack with a Star David in the middle, with a pair of sunglasses on, smoking a spliff. And it
bizarre.
says like, don't tread on me.
Yeah. Tread is spelled THREAD.
Yeah.
AI didn't know how to spell it.
Yeah.
Like, and then some of the signs from the march on O'Connell Street were there. Apparently, Conor McGregor rented a bus that we took off from the Black Forge.
Yeah,
so that went down, and they were just being. Oh yeah, there was a few Nazi salutes thrown. There was heads in front of me, so I couldn't see it, but I saw the exact same place where I was standing. There was a guy throwing a Nazi salute to them.
Oh,
and it was clearly like, I don't know whether he believes he's a fascist or he's just trying to get a rise, you know? What's the difference, I suppose? But like, there was an American flag. There was like a flag with Jesus on it. There was the one of the pictures. That was the one from the one on O'Connell Street. Was the picture with Putin, McGregor, and Trump.
That's a good one.
Yeah, bizarre.
I love that one.
And then they took off. They kind of, I guess they had held back while the other guys had headed off down whatever street that was. Sorry, my Cork geography's bad. And they were kind of like squaring off against the protesters. Oh yeah, the guards. I forgot to mention that. The guards, several guards on horseback. Each of the horses had a little fucking helmet on. It was very funny. And then a fucking chopper. And they brought the horses down from Dublin.
Boy, were their legs tired.
But the next thing, so they took off and then everyone started chanting, go back to fucking Dublin, and then they marched off. Oh yeah, sorry, another thing I forgot to mention. Loads of little green hats of Make Ireland Great Again, okay? I looked at one of them, I saw a guy, he turns around, it's fucking Damo and Ivor, only a few feet away from me wearing a hat.
No way.
I know, it was great. And so I was there with, again, person who will not be named, and I was like, so he was the only person who was with me, all right?
Yeah.
And no, I didn't. And then so then I said, I just turned around like a giddy little school kid. I was like, it's fucking Damo and Ivor, like pointing right at him. And like not realizing that all these people around me are going to be like looking at me going like, what's his fucking deal? I didn't hear him chanting. I didn't hear him applauding, you know, when we were...
Why are you so excited for the Damo and Ivor?
And I had to like keep it down then.
Did you get his autograph?
No, he turned away, but I've met him before at a completely different event before there's a producer who I worked with on the animated show
I was there.
Were you at that thing?
We went to see the premiere of the Damo.
No, this is a different thing.
Right.
This is the going away do for Eddie Doyle, who was the former head of comedy. And so who was there was Ty Kicky and then Damo and Ivor guy, both of them in the same room. And then none of the Hardy Bucks were there.
Sorry.
But I find that really funny. Oh yeah, Ty Kicky was at the the anti-racism demonstration, and he did a very good speech at the start, which I missed. But he managed to link the causes, which I thought that was another thing that I wanted to get to in a second. But we'll finish this one anecdote first. So the producer who on Ends Meet, the show that I made, also produced Ty Kicky's show, and also produced Damo and Ivor, and also produced the Hardy Bucks, one of the seasons of the Hardy Bucks. And I was like,
which season?
Huh? The
Which
third season, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of like, imagine that you're looking at your former, like, like where they all ended up. Like, half of them are far right headbangers, and the other half are far left headbangers. You know.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Ty Kicky or myself.
What?
I said no disrespect to Ty Kicky or myself.
What do you think his speech was like?
His speech was like, so again, like, I know that Palestine is very important and everybody had showed up for Palestine and had lined the streets, but then the Palestine demonstration took off, okay? And then the anti-racist demonstration that was left behind, few hundred people, okay? And I know they share like the same cause, but it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, this is a bleak one. Do you know what I mean? Like, so when Ty Kicky was up on stage, his speech, to my memory, was basically saying, you know, just connecting Palestine and anti-racism and how we need to draw all of these things together and fight the fascists wherever they are, okay? And I think that that's an important thing to do. I don't think it should be, here's the Palestine demonstration and here's the anti-racism demonstration. They should have been organized under the exact same banner. In fact, I think it should have been an exclusively anti-racism demonstration with a bunch of Palestinian flags there, because it just, you know, it's necessary to show that opposition to what we're seeing. Because, like, you know, whatever about the fucking, oh, you know, the racist who's going to see you and might one day be not racist, okay? What about the person who's going into those buildings, okay, who's being screamed at by racists? Like, I do think, like, there's a moral obligation. People go, oh, it's not very pragmatic. No, there's a moral obligation to show opposition to this, so that these people who aren't sitting in this fucking paint factory, you know, away from everything that they know, their families, being screamed at by racists. Like, I just can't, that can't sit with me. I don't, it's just, you know.
No, you have to support those people.
Yeah. Or you have to show that there is opposition to the people outside, and they need to know that, and you need the numbers. And that's what I feel. And it's like, oh, it's going to be creating more division and driving people into the arms of the far right. And it's like, I guess that's something we got to work out. But I just, like, I'm not going to care about the people who can join that that demonstration I just described. The supposedly good people who are standing right next to them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's never been a particularly compelling argument, you know.
Yeah. And I'm also going to put in some audio that I recorded and sent to you of so all of the people have basically gone. There's kind of some lingerers around, and I was thinking, like, Jesus, this is very aggressive far right. I'm not seeing the hippie types that I would normally see at some of these things. Okay,
the sort of cosmic right.
And yeah, and then I came back, and sure enough, they'd formed a little circle. They were all holding hands at the base of the statue, and they were surrounded by a bunch of signs commemorating the vaccine dead. Okay, and they started singing. They started an American woman. No, she was American or she was British. I can't remember. And she starts going, talking about the power of era and how you need era to flow through you. And we're now going to take a poem on the power of era, written in 2010. Don't know why she said that. And this woman went up and started reading this poem, and like a real kind of, you know, West Brit sounding voice, in the truest sense. I don't know why to say West. West Brit is actually something different, but yeah, you know that thing where it's like the Declan Ganley voice, where it's like you're Irish, but somehow you have an English accent, some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know how you managed to do it, motherfucker, but you're up there going, the power of era, you know. How do they say it in England again? How do they say Ireland in England?
Erie.
You know where they go, Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ireland.
It lifts codes of remembering, and it raises Eru again. She's the sleeping beauty, awoken by love. So I'm going to invite Colette to come here and read a beautiful poem she wrote about Eru in 2010. And then Eileen is going to sing a song in Irish, in the language of the heart. And then we are going to hold each other's hands and send that charge of love and gratitude. And love and gratitude brings about the highest frequency.
Yeah, praying to Ireland makes you a serious loser.
Oh my God. Yeah. They were fucking psychos. Like, the funniest thing is I saw this like out and out like scumbag racist, like this guy who was, should probably not use that word, it's derogatory, but like,
racist,
you know, he scumbag.
You said it again.
But he's like, there was these guys who were like charging through the anti-racism demonstration. They were livid to see so many people there being anti-racist, and they were like squaring off against anybody. Fuck you, trying to get somebody to come over and fight them, which didn't happen. But anyway, I saw them later on, and they were walking past a little prayer circle, and they were like, you could see it on their, they were kind of like, what the fuck is that? They were so embarrassed that was there. It's like, this is not the strong Irish man that I'm, you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I put up a story of these protesters being like pushed away or like sent off with the chant by the anti-racist demonstrators. And somebody who's based in Cork messaged, they were like, what the fuck, what was that? And I was like, oh, it was a racist demonstration. And they were like, I thought it was a football match. And I just thought it was so funny because so many people there would be wearing like you know, those leprechaun hats or like, you know, like fighting Irish type stuff. And like what they look like a stag party. Like their version of Ireland is the version of Ireland that we would make fun of Americans for doing in Temple Bar. It was so funny.
I know. It really is like the... You know that ad for the Immigration Museum?
Yeah.
It was like the fella with the potato for a skull. It was like,
Yeah.
this isn't us. It's like, some of us. Yeah, there is a real sense with some of those groups. It's like they've been so atomized and like disconnected and discombobulated that like their idea of being Irish is like it's just so scrambled. You know?
Yeah.
It's like we like to fight and drink. And we like paddy caps.
Yeah.
You know? We like Darby O'Gill. He's a hero.
Yeah. I like, it's kind of like the TERFs, isn't it? You know, the way that they're like, women can do anything. Excuse me, we need to use like, don't you mean he/she, you know? And now like a decade later, those same kind of feminists are like, women stay at home and have loads of kids and have sick all over their shoulder. And it's like, I thought this was the thing that you said that we weren't, you know, or not women weren't, you know, but it's like, you know, like years ago, if an American showed up in Ireland wearing a paddy hat and was like, I'm in Ireland, how are you doing? You know what? I love fighting Irish and you love to drink. They'd be like, fucking wanker, you know?
Yeah.
But now they'd be like, he gets it. He understands.
Yeah, I love his tattoo of Ireland with the Irish flag in it and a heart. Because that shows he loves Ireland, you know?
Yeah.
It's so subtle. It's so tasteful.
That's the end of the free bit. Go to patreon.com for the rest, where the Ligers talk about the guards doing an oopsie by giving the Carlow lone shooter a gun, then a breakdown of the government's latest housing bonanza for all of the groups causing the crisis. And finally a cinema section as the Ligers watch a clip from the upcoming Animal Farm movie.